So good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank each of you for joining us this morning for the launch of this significant report. My colleagues in Pobal and I were delighted to have the opportunity to contribute to the development of this report and to provide feedback and assistance to the Research Programme Steering Committee, and to join colleagues from government, representative groups and organisations, the ESRI on the Social Inclusion and Community Activation Programme Stakeholder Advisory Panel. So we have a number of questions that have already come in through the system. Our panel this morning includes Alan Barrett, Adele and Emer Smyth from the ESRI. Paul Geraghty, Principal Officer from the Department of Rural and Community Development, is hoping to join us for the second set of questions after we've seen some more practical practitioner-based exemplars from SICAP. As each of you know already, SICAP addresses high and persistent levels of deprivation through targeted and innovative, locally led approaches. It is a demonstration of supported success. So in terms of the questions that we have for our panel here, in particular our report authors, there are some queries that are coming in around the breakdown of those who benefited most from the scheme. So was there a breakdown on disability status and the nature of the disability? So the type, or whether there was a breakdown in terms of gender and ethnicity. So Adele or Emer, perhaps either of you would like to answer those questions. Thanks, Adele.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, unfortunately, in terms of disability status, there was no breakdown. But in terms of ethnicity and nationality, yes, we did have a breakdown. And gender, we also had a breakdown, and there's many details included within the report around that. So females were less likely to move into employment, and also those from ethnic minorities. We found that they were less likely to move into employment supports than other individuals, and they faced unique barriers to employment.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Okay, thank you, Adele. We have some further queries coming in relation to data on specific tailored supports for persons with disabilities. Was that an information set that we were able to glean as part of this research? Thanks, Adele.
So in terms of specific supports, we didn't have any detail on that within the data. We did know within the data individuals who were reporting a disability and the supports that they were receiving, whether they received pre-employment supports or not. They were less likely to move into employment, but we did see also that individuals were being assisted. When we had the interviews with participants, we saw that it appeared to be quite successful in terms of assisting individuals into employment and dealing with their specific needs. So whether that was referral to other supports providers and also assisting with CVs and recognizing areas where individuals could seek employment, whether it be for reduced hours or, you know, to move people into employment. Certainly there was individuals within the data set and that we interviewed that were availing of the supports.
Okay, thank you, Adele. A question now for Emer. So Emer, in terms of employment support evaluations, how does this SICAP pre-employment evaluation compare or differ?
Well, it is much more positive than previous evaluations that have been carried out at the ESRI and elsewhere. So we're seeing very strong positive effects, which is unusual, and it's unusual to be able to detect them. And I think also where it differs is that we could unpack the information further to look at what was driving that. And we saw that it was really the one-to-one employment supports and the qualitative information very much backed up that focus on intensive supports, on very basic things like maintaining phone contact with participants who maybe didn't turn up for a day course, and just constantly encouraging them and reassuring them and kind of boosting their self-confidence in that way.
Okay, thanks, Emer. Another question for you, Emer. Are there some groups that are really hard to involve in SICAP employment supports? And did the research indicate anything that might support or assist or break that cycle?
Well, in particular, the LDCs reported difficulties or challenges at times involving some minority groups such as travellers or Roma and some ethnic minority groups. And some LDCs in particular were doing really stellar work, innovative work in outreach. So they were taking account of very basic things like, discovering when people would gather in the local direct provision centre and making sure that even if that was the weekend, that they would be there to talk through people's options. For traveller young men, they were using kind of high interest courses like the driver theory test to kind of bring in young men and then start to talk about broader needs once they became more comfortable at engaging with services. But those challenges aren't unique to SICAP. And in fact, SICAP, because, as Adele said, of the voluntary nature of engagement, has been more successful than many other provisions in kind of linking to those hard to reach groups.
Okay, thanks, Emer. And one final question for whichever one of you wishes to take it. Do we have any information on the types of jobs or the sustainability of employment that SICAP beneficiaries were moving into? Would either of you like, Adele, you'd like to take that question? Thanks.
So we did have some information within the data set. It wasn't very well recorded, but we did have some individuals who had completed information. And we would say that it's quite important to collect that information to be able to say something about the types of jobs and also the sustainability of the jobs. We found that predominantly temporary contracts on around the minimum wage, and they were in the areas of health sector, construction sector and sales predominantly, was just a rough idea around the summary stats of the information that we had. This is something that we would like to look at in more detail. And if we had access to administrative data, we would be able to give a more rich analysis of that.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Adele. Thank you, Emer. We do have some more questions that have come through, but they're much more policy focused. So Paul, who'll be hopefully joining us for the next question, it's a question and answer session, maybe best placed to answer them. So the questions are regarding, rural Ireland and transportation issues. Will e-learning and digital training be explored more? So that's a much more policy focused question. So obviously key to the findings was the contribution provided by the 33 local community development committees, local authorities and programme implementers. So just to acknowledge that completely. Again, we hear and have heard testimonials regarding the essential role the programme implementers have played when working in particular with marginalised communities and service providers using a community development approach to improve people's lives, which essentially is what this is all about. So look, thank you both for your contributions, and thank you to everybody who has submitted questions and comments. I'm now going to hand over to the next section of the webinar this morning, which is a video presentation from very much focused from a practitioner and a community development perspective regarding what has worked and what are the challenges. So I'll hand over to Dee.